Welcome to the Week 13 NFL Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Week 13's upon us. Starts tonight. Who plays at Washington, Dallas? Another Dallas primetime game. How excited we can be.
So I did some diving last night for Dez Bryant. I went back. I had some nostalgic Oklahoma State Dez Bryant highlight watching. And then I was like, you know what? Let's go watch early season Dez Bryant. And because clearly the talk is all about him not being able to separate and it just being an ugly situation. Okay, so early career Dez Bryant certainly was better. No denying that. And he's got less defined muscle. It's really bizarre. Early career Dez Bryant was really bulky, but he's the same guy. Romo just would throw it to him even when he was covered. That's really the only difference. And Dak doesn't do that. So that's the difference. Sorry, Dak Prescott fans. That's what's going on. And it's been going on since Dak became the starting quarterback. And you guys can all screw off. And, is my Dak Prescott bias showing? Oh, excuse me. He's going to throw for 50 yards again tonight. All right, let's get into the slate. Week 13, FanDuel. You mentioned, this season has grinded you down. Maybe doing a little less exposure this week, but I think we're going to have some fun. I think this is going to be a fun slate.
We're back to no bye weeks. We're how many games are on this slate? Over 10 for sure. It's time to kind of narrow things down. Like when we get these huge weeks, there's a couple of games where I kind of just cross off. Detroit Baltimore is not a game I'm looking at like I'm crossing off. I think that's a good strategy for these bigger slates.
I've wanted to play Jeremy Maclin all season, and I've finally come to grips with the fact that it's just never, not once, going to pay off. So that's that, and I'm done with that. So yeah, I agree. Maybe you can play Kenny Golladay for $10 on Yahoo, but other than that, totally agree.
Yeah. Let's jump in. Let's dive into quarterback this week. It's kind of a little bit different between the sites. You have Russell Wilson, you have Carson Wentz on FanDuel and play in the main slate. DraftKings, obviously, I think is a little bit tricky this week because you have Tom Brady. If Phillip Rivers is $7K, I don't love paying $7K for Phillip Rivers.
Oh, man. I mean, I think it's fine if you want to. I don't love it. Totally agree. It's not a great price, but they're a well-oiled. I love the Chargers right now. I think they're going to continue to churn this out. It's going to be an ugly game for Cleveland, both offensively and defensively. Does that mean Rivers hits value at that price? He hasn't really, even with these big Keenan Allen games, so probably lean no, but he's definitely in play and sort of a nice cash option, especially if you go Allen, Gordon, Rivers. That's 60, 70 points for me, I think.
I mean, I can certainly, I'm going to be playing him this week. At $7K, I'm not going to have as much exposure there as I do over on FanDuel, where he's $8K, he's $1,300 cheaper than Brady. He's a couple hundred cheaper than Wilson, Wentz. I think it's an okay play. Obviously, great matchup against Cleveland. We look at basically Rivers ownership. It should be probably a little bit lower on DraftKings compared to FanDuel this week. So he's in play for me. Just not as excited because of that price tag. And how do you feel about Brady? I mean, being at his price tag this week.
Love Brady. Patriots finally hit their stride, both offensively and defensively. I'm ready for the Brandon Cooks show again. I'm ready for the Gronk show again. Rex Burkhead, Deion Lewis, sign me up. Let's do all of them. Let's go. Gostkowski, bring the whole squad. Patriots defense. Let's go. I mean, it's that time of year where, the Bills are the Bills and they do what they do every season. And now, it's time for the big boys to take over. And that's what's going to happen,
I mean, 10 touchdowns in the last 3 games. His history against Buffalo has obviously been superb.
Yeah.
I have obviously no issue paying up. I think it's, obviously a little bit easier to do over on FanDuel, even at a higher price tag. You just have a little bit more leniency. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously Brady and Rivers come in kind of as two of the clear top options. But I kind of am intrigued with this Wilson Wentz matchup here on Sunday night on FanDuel. I think they're interesting plays that I think are going to get overlooked because it just doesn't seem like a game that could scream fantasy points. But uh, Seattle's banged up secondary. Wilson's obviously carrying this offense. Philly can obviously move the ball against anyone. I kind of think this one can turn into a little bit of a shootout. Philly's secondary isn't that great.
Yeah, and quickly on Brady again, I don't look at him as a cash game play. I look at him as a tournament only play because of his price, like you mentioned. So I'm not looking for 25 points if I play him. And that's kind of what he's been doing, other than that early season burst. So that's not what I want if I play him. More so, he's much more of a tournament play than a cash play, because if he gets you 25, there's going to be those like Brett Hundley is another guy we're going to talk about. They're saving 3,000 on you on FanDuel, and then $20 on Yahoo. So it's like, is that really worth 25 points? Absolutely not. You need that big 33, 35 point game. That's the only reason you're playing Brady this week.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Do you have any interest in Wentz or Wilson on FanDuel this week?
Absolutely. That was one of the main things you brought up before we hopped on here. Sneaky shootout between two defenses that are, good. Like Philly's D is really good against running backs, but that's totally irrelevant in this game. You know what I mean? Like that's totally irrelevant that they can get a lot of pressure, so that's good. But really their base is their run D, and that doesn't matter at all. So yeah, I like that shootout potential. I think that's a game stack potential, sprinkling in, either Packers or Patriots, and just kind of rolling with that. On DK, it's kind of nice not to have to worry about that, though, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so, because that adds definitely another dimension to that middle tier. And we kind of look, moving down. Once again, like FanDuel, these prices are not bad for some of these. Like Jared Goff at 7,900 against Arizona. Like I'm still more than fine plugging him in right now. He's 67 on DK. That's a little bit pricey for me. Cam
38 on Yahoo. So that hurts.
Yeah, Cam Newton's a guy I'm intrigued with as long as he's healthy coming into this week. I don't like to take a ton of history, from previous games, but last 4 games against the Saints, 14, 30, 41, and 33. Obviously, the Saints were kind of at a different time period with that defense. They've sure improved this year. We obviously need to keep an eye on that secondary health coming into this week, but Newton obviously is kind of bringing the upside lately. Like he's starting to run a little bit more. His rushing fantasy outcomes over the last 4 weeks solely at fantasy points, 8.8, 9.5, 14.6, and 4.4. So we're starting to get a good rushing floor out of Newton here.
I like that call. He isn't really a guy I'm on, but I certainly think he's a viable play. At the Jets has kind of been a tough matchup for opposing offenses this year, so certainly don't blame him for that. And then
he's at the Saints, so
no, I know. I'm saying last week.
Oh yeah,
like he didn't have a great game, but at the Jets has kind of been a tough matchup this year, so not something I'm necessarily worried about. But truly, if I'm not going with Wentz, Wilson, or Brady, I'm kind of looking to go down, unless I want to be contrarian and go Goff. I'm heading straight down to the bargain bin. With some gambling moves. I think Josh McCown in that middle tier is in play. And I know you mentioned you like Case Keenum, but mostly I'm staying away from that middle tier.
Yeah, I know you and I kind of differ a little bit this week because you do like diving down. Like I really don't mind. Obviously I think Tennessee's been really difficult this year to trust, but Mariota, his price tags, especially FanDuel, like I'm worth looking in GPPs. You just look at the potential that the Houston's kind of given up to quarterbacks this week or last couple weeks. I mean, we saw it. Blaine Gabbert had a decent game. Like they're giving up big games to kind of bad or average quarterbacks, and that's really what Mariota's been this year. So a little pricey for me on DraftKings, but I think 7,400 on FanDuel is worth a look. Yeah, Case Keenum, I'm intrigued with. This is a potential shootout game. Keenum's still kind of playing for his job on a week-to-week basis. Like I kind of like that narrative to it where he's got to come out and show out each week, and he's done that, and he's also got that rushing upside. So 6K on DraftKings, I think a Vikings stack or even a solo Keenum play is worth a look.
All right, so we got to talk about it. I think he's going to be uber chalk this week, and I dig it. Brett Hundley. So before we get into it, let me just read the teams he's played since he started. At Minnesota, versus New Orleans, with Lattimore, and that other Crowley, that creepy name. Versus Detroit, so that was an easy one. At Chicago, versus Baltimore, at Pitt. Like, that's really tough, and then he gets this Tampa Bay defense that is totally given up on the season. I just think this is a lock, personally.
I'm not going all in on like a Hundley like binge this week. I'm not. I get it. I understand it. For me, like I kind of rather play like McCown for 400 more, as crazy as that sounds on DraftKings. FanDuel, I think he's a much more viable play for me.
So FanDuel, he's 64, and Yahoo, he's 23. I just think you lock him in there, unless, as I mentioned, you want to go for that 35-point Brady game or the Wilson Wentz, craziness. I just think him getting less than 15 just doesn't seem possible to me unless he gets hurt, I guess.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I mean, 6,400, it's pretty easy to pay off that price tag. You should be able to hit 15 plus points. He's a full $1,000 cheaper than really the next quarterback I would even play, which is like Bortles and Mariota on FanDuel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, if I need some savings, and I want to rock a stacked lineup, Hundley is clearly in play for that.
Right. Alex Smith. We're finally getting last year's Alex Smith when I suggested him every week as a good play. This is the guy that I remember suggesting. So that's good times,
Yeah. One last guy I'll throw out there in GPPs is Blake Bortles. Decent success, obviously, against Indy in the past. We saw Rashawn Melvin leave the game last week. That's a significant loss for that defense. D.D. Westbrook, Marquise Lee, guys are obviously that are in play this week if Alan Hearn sits. Bortles has been playing pretty well. Good history at home here against, the Colts. Like, he's been better at home this year, averaging 18 fantasy points compared to 13 on the road. 7,400 on FanDuel, 54 on DK. Like, I'm okay with him in GPPs this week.
Certainly. And I don't know what's going on with Jameis Winston, but I do know he's probably going to be like 3%. So if you don't want to play Hundley, and you want to get action in that game, I think that could be a way to do it.
He practiced in Foley this week. Wednesday.
They say he's going to start. So if he's going to start, he's not quite as cheap as I'd want, but I think that ownership's going to be low.
5,600 on DK is not that bad, but 73 on FanDuel. I'll take it. Green Bay's been middle of the road in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks this year, 22nd DVOA. Yeah, I think Winston. That gives me my hype back for Evans this week.
There you go.
So, anyone else you want to talk about here?
Nah.
Let's move on to running backs. I feel like it's a little bit of a tricky week here. We know Le'Veon Bell, obviously, on the main slate, which hasn't made a huge difference this year. What are you doing with the Saints backfield? It's kind of just been, is Kamara going to keep this train rolling here?
I threw out a tweet this morning about Kamara comparing his first, 127 touches to Kareem Hunt's first 126 touches. And essentially it's just like, no, this isn't going to keep happening. This just isn't going to keep happening. If you want to bet on it against this Carolina defense, I think this is a great week to finally fade Kamara and feel comfortable with it. I've kind of been sprinkling him in the last few weeks. And I haven't been getting full exposure, but I've been getting enough. This is the first week where I'm like, okay, I can fade pretty comfortably. His price is high, across all the sites. It feels like the time where it's like, all right, I can fade this guy getting 13 touches a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel as comfortable.
I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it. I mean, he's been off the wall, but it's kind of like Kareem Hunt. Fading Kareem Hunt after those first 6 games was like, he's going to go for 30 every game. How am I possibly going to do this? Like, it's going to come at some point. There's going to be a game where the opposing team says, all right, this is the best player on the field. We have to stop him. And they put like 2 spies on him the entire game. So, like, that's going to happen soon, if not this week. That's kind of my thing,
Yeah, for a guy who's passed 25 fantasy points in each last 4 weeks on DraftKings, I will say that he has a relatively safer DraftKings floor than he does over on FanDuel. I mean, you look at his catches, 6, 5, 6 over that span. He's getting targeted in the passing game. Obviously, 3 receiving touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't need to tell you about that. Like, that stuff will come back down to earth here soon. I think a lot of people are going to be overweight on him, even in a tough matchup. So I'm in agreement that you can make some fades. The problem is I'm not in love with this kind of top tier. Like, I think Todd Gurley's actually a sneaky option. Even on the road against Arizona, their defense has been pretty average this season. Leonard Fournette dropped in price, practiced in Foley this week. Pretty good spot here, and probably going to get lower ownership even in a pretty good matchup.
I'll leave this for you to break down because the Colts defense better than I do, but they still seem to like limit, even without any of their good players left. They still seem to kind of control, like, don't let anyone go nuts. So, I mean, I do like Fournette. It's good that he's practicing in full. I much prefer Gurley there, as you mentioned. I think he's a great play with Goff. I think they're a great combination this week, especially, you look at the first game, Gurley did really well against Arizona. He had, let me look. What did he do that first game against? Yeah, so he had 4 receptions, 48 yards, 22 carries, 106 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I kind of see something similar happening this game, and he's broken a few big receptions this year and caught a few touchdowns. So if you can get that receiving touchdown, that's huge. Playing with Kupp. McCoy, I'm totally staying away from. Again, I was in on the Patriots D before the year. They kind of shunned me early on, but this is what I was expecting. They've just totally limited all the upside for opposing offenses over the last 6 or so weeks. Do you think McCoy is in play, or is it like he's a screaming value? Cafe Value loves him. All the projection models based on defense this year are going to love him. I just think the well is kind of dried up,
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I mean, I think you can get a share or two if you're building multiple lineups, but like he's not in my first 5 in terms of running backs that I want to be plugging in this week. I much rather go with Melvin Gordon even at higher ownership. Melvin Gordon's in a pretty good spot. You were kind of warming me up to Gordon before the week because this is a better matchup than really what it seems. Obviously the Browns 31st in DVOA against pass catching backs, but over the last 5 weeks, they've allowed the 4th most fantasy points. That was something that was pretty eye opening. And I know you mentioned obviously on salary exploitation this week. So I kind of rather go Gordon over McCoy.
Mm-hmm. And I actually think Ingram is the better New Orleans back this week. So if I'm going to play a New Orleans back, it's probably going to be Ingram. But Jordan Howard in that range, I really like him. Carlos Hyde, I don't love it. I like, Hyde better, or I like Howard better in that range.
Yeah, I do too. Howard's going to get the workload. We talked about him on salary exploitation. I don't mind him. What are you doing anything with Kareem Hunt here? He's 6,900 on FanDuel. He's 6,900 on DraftKings. I mean, significant bargain over on FanDuel.
Nope.
You're done. Are you done with the Kareem Hunt train
Done.
here?
Yep, done till he proves it to me. I mean,
You got off weeks ago, man. And honestly, the one difference between Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara has been this year is we actually got to play Kamara during his good games.
exactly. Like he showed us little signs. I just wish Kareem Hunt, like his season had been backwards, like you mentioned, because we would have been on some of these matchups and it would have just been great. But I've been off and he's 25% every week still, because they keep dropping that price and people keep playing him and I just can't do it. I just can't, so that's that. Coleman and I think Freeman playing takes Coleman out for me against Minnesota. What's your take there?
Yep, I think they're both out of play for me. Tough matchup, even at home. I know they're cheap. Minnesota's just been really good against the run, fewest fantasy points allowed this year. I think we kind of see a little bit of a split workload this week as well. I don't think Freeman's going to be rushed back into like a 65-35, 60-40 type role. So yeah, I think there's far better options you can go with. Given the fact that Deion Lewis and Marshawn Lynch are both similar, price on FanDuel, a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. Those are two guys that I have a pretty big interest in this week in terms of matchups and workload.
I certainly am in on those two, and I actually think this is a great pay down week. We're starting to see some of these wide receivers emerge in dominant roles again. And especially if Winston plays, I like Evans as a pay up. But back to running backs, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, I think Jamal Williams is, pretty much a lock on Yahoo and DraftKings, and then FanDuel as well, only 5,700. So, and I mean Latavius Murray isn't a great matchup this week, but over 12 FanDuel points in 4 of the last 5 weeks. So it's certainly something to be aware of, and kind of caps McKinnon's upside.
So I was gonna talk about those two, and I want to mention Williams real quick. 60 rushing attempts, over the last 3 weeks, 9 catches for over 100 yards. You kind of went back to the matchups. He played 3 opponents who ranked inside the top 12 in DVOA against the run. Like now he's finally getting a good spot here, and we saw the upside last week. Like he's a tremendous bargain in terms of the volume alone.
Yeah, automatic play on Yahoo, especially with quarterback pricing this week. So if Aaron Jones doesn't play, just lock him in. I don't know. I think there's no reason to go below that unless you want to play a Rex Burkhead with Brady. I will say Kenyon Drake could get featured this week against Denver. I know that's not a great matchup, but if you're looking for a guy in that cheap range, 14 on Yahoo, pretty cheap on DraftKings. So I think you could go in that direction. I don't love it, but it's kind of like that tournament 1 in 20 lineups. I think you could definitely go with him.
Certainly. So I think, overall, like if we're looking at value backs this week, Marshawn Lynch, Jamal Williams, Deion Lewis kind of come out as 3 of the top ones for me here.
Fair enough. And I'll go Jamal and then Mixon on Monday night, baby. Let's go.
I do want to mention Jerick McKinnon real quick. He's still seeing solid touches. Obviously, Murray's been getting a lot of the goal line work. He's seen 22 targets over the last 4 weeks, over 10 rushing attempts in that span. Atlanta, 4th most receptions to backs this year, 8.9 attempts go there, 20th in DVOA. They're not a great defense. They're kind of just bend, don't break. And I think McKinnon's kind of interesting here, like more of a DK play at 5,100 because of the PPR. I don't know. Maybe I'm not on the Murray train. Like he's a guy I think who can fizzle out here soon if he doesn't get that touchdown.
Oh, fantasy wise, he can definitely fizzle out. It's just the touchdown goal line stuff is kind of annoying for McKinnon. But you mentioned it. The pass catching backs versus Atlanta, their defense allows those plays. That's just the way their defense is set up with the zone. So, yeah, I think that's a great call as sort of a contrarian play. He's going to be low owned. This is a great McKinnon week. I like that play, Jason.
Yeah, I like the Vikings here in this spot.
That's a good call. I like it.
Anyone else you want to talk about running back?
No.
Let's move on. Wide receiver. I, obviously, I think we have to talk Keenan Allen. We have to talk Julio Jones. Keenan Allen for me. I mean, I'm kind of waiting for. I'm expecting a little bit of a letdown here, to be honest.
Yes, compared to the previous 2 weeks, but that could still mean 6 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown, which is what I want this year at wide receiver. Even at a higher price. So, I don't know. It's tough. Tough to figure if you want to go all in on him again. Obviously, it's a decent matchup. We'll see, what the cornerback matchup is like, but I'd say he's a pretty sure thing in terms of floor. So for cash games, I'm pretty much all in. As I mentioned, I think you can go Rivers, Gordon, Allen, and feel pretty safe. You're getting at least, 55, 60 fantasy points from that.
Yeah, I mean the good news is you mentioned the cornerback matchup. Allen's not going to draw Jason McCourty, running a majority out of his routes out of the slot. So, it's a great spot for him. Like they're 32nd DVOA against wide receiver ones. I kind of mess around because he's not going to score 35 fantasy points again. But like you said, he's got a really safe floor, especially on PPR sites.
Yeah, and if you were abducted by aliens 20 years ago, and then like you were just dropped back on, and they handed you a laptop and they were like, all right, you only get to look at last week and this week. You'd say, hey, Marvin Jones had 31 points against the Vikings and Julio Jones had 44 points last week. So that plus that equals at least 35 fantasy points for Julio Jones this week, right?
So Marvin Jones, dusted Xavier Rhodes last week. Rhodes
absolutely
was on the shadow.
Made him. He probably was holding back the tears.
I know. So I kind of go in. Rhodes has shadowed Antonio Brown this year, held him to 4 catches, 54 yards. Mike Evans 4 catches, 36 yards. Marvin Jones earlier this year 1 catch for 4 yards. He's a guy I don't like to target, but obviously I think Jones is essentially a guy who can be matchup proof at times. He's going to go out and get his as long as he gets his targets. GPPs, I'm cool with it. I don't see how much I'm going to be using him a lot. I kind of prefer Keenan Allen. I like Mike Evans a little bit more this week. So yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to be going back and chasing the Jones week, but sure.
No, I know. It was sort of a really bad joke that I just wanted to keep running with. But, why can't he just get 10 to 15 targets a week? Why can't this be what I get every week? Because if I get that, then I'm going to be playing him a lot. But we clearly see that, I don't know. He's always in play to me, but certainly not a great matchup. And Rhodes is pretty dominant. So DeAndre Hopkins, just obliterated Baltimore secondary last week. He's certainly a guy I'm looking at again.
I am too. Obviously going up against Tennessee is certainly a decent spot here. Looking at his shadow situation is probably going to be Adoree Jackson, who's been pretty average this year. So yeah, I'm cool with it. Hopkins is very much in play. I like the Minnesota wide receivers here. Adam Thielen continues to produce 19, 27, 33, and 20 over the last 4 weeks, like 42 targets in that span. It's pretty clear he's the go-to guy in this offense. And last week was obviously very encouraging given the fact he didn't find the end zone and still put up 15 plus fantasy points. So Thielen's in play for me even at higher price tags. I think Stephon Diggs is actually an excellent GPP play this week. Atlanta 28th in DVOA against wide receiver twos. Hasn't seen a ton of targets, but he's been around kind of that 5 to 7 range on a weekly basis, and he's going to be contrarian.
No.
Am I too pro Vikings this week?
No, you're not. I just I don't like Adam Thielen, and I didn't like him before the season. I'm not ready to let it go yet.
Well,
like he every week he just puts me in a chokehold and gives me a noogie, and I'm just that stubborn cousin who's like, you know what? Yeah, well, I'm going to grow up soon and be as strong as him, and then I'm going to take him down. So watch out, Adam Thielen. I'm going to get in the gym
Oh
because I'm
god.
sick of this. I'm sick of getting pushed around by Adam Thielen. I've had enough. Um, but I mean, yeah, he's a good play, but I don't like him, and I'm probably not going to play him out of spite. Uh, Doug Baldwin, I think he's an okay play as a tournament guy, not someone I'm really looking at in that range, though, especially compared to Thielen, Hopkins, Cooks, Thomas.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's much more of a play that I'd be looking at. Devin Funchess, we need to keep an eye on. Just the injury wise, could be a pretty tough matchup if Lattimore's back. You obviously expect Lattimore to shadow Funchess, and obviously it's pretty clear that he's kind of developed himself as a really solid corner. So I don't know how much I'd be going him. Like I said, I think that would take a pretty clear downgrade just in terms of the Panthers in general.
Definitely. And then we get into some really fun plays. I think Larry Fitzgerald coming off a really bad game against, Jalen Ramsey. I think this is a great time to jump back on him against this Rams team that I believe he did really well against early in the year. He's done well against pretty much everybody. Oh, no, 3 for 29. That's fine. We're going to keep it moving. But the point is that he went for 329. Never mind. I'm going to shut up. All right. Talk about Mike Evans.
Mike Evans, I mean, we hopped on earlier this week and you immediately were just like, Mike Evans going to go to town. I was kind of just like, yeah, sure, it's going to go to town, but he should really go to town this week. Like,
really, he really, this should be a Mike Evans week.
He hasn't crossed over 100 yards this year. This should be the week that he does it. The price is obviously down across the industry. Great matchup here, 30th in DVOA against wide receiver ones, 259 receiving yards allowed per game. I like Evans this week. I think he's kind of that nice tier one play at a discount here, especially on FanDuel. He's 7,500. Like he's priced right around wide receiver 9, wide receiver 10. So yeah, I think Evans is in play. And then the mid range kind of gets a little bit iffy for me. I don't like the Miami guys this week. Not really a fan of the Detroit guys or obviously T.Y. Hilton. Tyreek Hill's going to see some Morris Claiborne, falling around the field. Like I'm kind of going to be dropping down probably kind of like running backs into or quarterbacks into that other tier.
I love that when I see Jacksonville, I can just cross off all the receivers on that list. It's great.
So easy.
I wish there were more teams like that. Denver's kind of lost it this year, but I just love having a team like that. Sterling Shepard obviously is in play if he plays. I love Devontae Adams this week. Obviously, the quarterback situation has kept his ownership down, but he's been balling, and he's cheap. Not as cheap as I want on Yahoo. He's 30, but across the other two, certainly in reasonable price range for me to go to.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of weird because we got a lot of injuries in this middle tier. Obviously, Amari Cooper concussion. He's a long shot to play this week. Michael Crabtree suspended. Emmanuel Sanders still banged up. Deshaun Jackson banged up. Like we got a lot to kind of keep an eye on. Cooper Kupp, I know you mentioned him earlier. Obviously, a great play this week. Sammy Watkins going to be shadowed by Patrick Peterson. That's where I kind of expect more offense to flow through Gurley, flow through Kupp here. Could even see Reynolds get in on some action again. So like I like the Rams offense. I just don't like Watkins this week in this spot. Kupp's a little bit site dependent for me. A great bargain on FanDuel this week. He's only 6,300. He's 64 on DraftKings. That's a little bit pricey, but obviously still in play everywhere.
Yeah, there's no reason to go to Miami receivers. Like they're just quarterback plays too inconsistent. As you mentioned, I'm off Watkins. No Denver pass catchers, no Oakland pass catchers, unless you want to get crazy, with Seth Roberts. And really that middle tier kind of trash. I don't really like it, and that's why I talked about the value running backs. I think this is a nice week to pay up for Brandon Cooks and Mike Evans in one lineup. Or get
I think that's
with the high price guys.
Yeah, I think that's a great call in terms of pointing out how lineup construction could go because really you kind of drop below here. We get Corey Coleman. Obviously Casey Hayward had a death in the
Yeah.
family. His issue or his
Oh,
status for Sunday is going to be, questionable. Obviously, unfortunately, it would create a better spot for Coleman, but Chargers secondary just continues to produce these depth guys that come in and step up and play really well. Like they're really good. Like they lost two guys, and it's like here we are with basically the same secondary that stepped in at the beginning of the year and towards the end of last year.
you know that scene where Walter in The Big Lebowski gets kicked out of the bowling league because he threatened the guy with a gun because he was
Yeah,
over the line,
yeah.
and they're having the talk, and Walter just goes, "I did not know that. I did not know that. I did not know that Casey Hayward had a death in the family. I did not know that." Yeah, it's a tough matchup, but Coleman's had a tough matchup every game. That's just how it goes for him. So I don't love the play, but he's in play and he's kind of a target hog yet that's really cheap. So it just sucks we're getting all these tough matchups when he's cheap because, by next week, he's not going to be cheap anymore.
No,
So
he's not. And Josh Gordon being back, it's the hype train's back. It's week 13
oh
of
boy.
2017. It's the
Can
same
you
thing
believe
every
that?
year.
Can you believe that? No, well, it is different this year. He is actually playing, but it's been 3 years, guys. Like,
I
and people are just not. Nothing has deterred them from their love. They're just still all in. It's like we paused. They cut out that entire scene from the movie, that like the 2.5 hours from the movie, and they're just like opening credits. Oh, here we are again. Yep, happy times.
it's sad.
It's sad.
Yeah, I as far as bottom value wide receivers go, I think the other two that I was really looking at was D.D. Westbrook. Obviously, I think Marquise Lee is in play. If he plays, he's questionable right now. Allen Hurns doubtful. We saw Melvin obviously leave last week. I think that really does clear up a lot of room for these wide receivers to go out and produce at their price tags. We've seen Westbrook, he's getting a ton of targets, 16 over the last 2 weeks. This team allows a ton of big plays, at 4,100 on DK. What is he over on FanDuel?
I don't know.
4,700. Very solid wide receiver 3 this week if you are really paying up for other options.
Yeah, I think Lockett and Richardson both sort of values, in my opinion. I'm not doing the Corey Davis dance this week again. I like paying up, but if I'm paying down, it's going to be for Jacksonville, Seattle receivers, Corey Coleman, fun guys, not guys who are going to get me 4 for 26. So, if you want 4 for 26, Corey Davis is your man.
On 10 targets.
I mean, he could always turn it around. Clearly a talented guy, but yeah, I mean, you kind of look at Ted Ginn, Kenny Stills, like Marquise Goodwin, all these weird plays that are like one-offs. Randall Cobb against the Buccaneers. They're all kind of plays, but nothing that I want to like fully invest in. They're just kind of like one-offs.
Yeah. I mean, they're one-off GPP moves and really nothing more.
Right.
I think when we look at it like that range, you kind of mentioned Jeremy Maclin. Like Mike Wallace is going to be shadowed by Darius Slay. That's not a great matchup for him. Tier kind of gets a little bit ugly. So I think, to your prior point, like paying up or paying down at running back or maybe going one of both ways, because you can clearly get in a bigger guy and a Jamal Williams and still plug in kind of whoever you want a wide receiver.
Do we have to talk about Robbie Anderson?
Yes, we do, sir. Yes, we do. KC, 28th in DVOA against wide receiver ones. They've struggled. They're giving up plenty of points to wide receivers this year. He's pricey. He's still going to be lower owned. I know you hate him.
29 points against Carolina.
I'm gonna make a Robbie Anderson, Adam Thielen lineup this week and just call it I hate Russ.
Oh my God, he's a great play again. It's unbelievable. Won't he just go away? I'm
Sorry,
just
man.
watching all these people in best ball leagues win with Robbie Anderson, and I'm like, stop it.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, good sir.
he's a great play again. Whatever.
All
Uh,
right.
tight end.
Let's move the tight ends here. Let's start with the top option. Gronk coming off a massive week. I think this is another Gronk week. We've seen him kind of put together some big outings. It's hard to kind of see him put them together in a row. It's obviously not an eye-popping matchup on paper, but he's a mismatch for really any defense. Um, I'm more than fine going with him. I think with the pay down structure at running back, it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Exactly. So, and that's kind of how my whole week's going. It's like, all right, well, if I pay down at running back, I can fit in Gronk comfortably. So I like that. I like Gronk quite a bit across all the slates. I don't think his price really matters, unless he's going to be 8K on DraftKings. His price doesn't really matter to me. He's kind of a matchup play because when he goes off, he gets 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. So um, I I like him quite a bit. He's kind of like the cash game guy for me this week, especially with other positions considered. Uh, Zach Ertz, he's going to get the receptions. He's in play on DK, but not loving him, on FanDuel.
Yeah, a little pricey for me. I think if I really was kind of looking at a pivot away, I'm looking at Travis Kelce. Not a bad spot here. Jamal Adams, third most fantasy points per route run against. Kelsey's in play as a GPP pivot. He's going to be lower owned. People are off of the Chiefs. I mean, at this stage with how they're playing, like KC's always going to be a team that's probably sub 10, sub 15% owned unless people continue to play Hunt like me. So, they're going to be lower owned. I don't mind Kelsey as kind of that GPP pivot. And what are your thoughts on Evan Ingram this week? I really like him in GPPs.
He's a great GPP play. We don't know what's going to happen with Geno, but it could be 35-14 before you know it, and he could be dumping it off to Ingram. So I like prevent defenses in the fourth quarter, and I mean, Oakland should be able to score on New York, even though their offense is terrible. Jared Cook, you could make a weird lineup on DK, that's for sure. With like Jared Cook, Ingram, and then like Marshawn Lynch, and just like and Seth Roberts, and then like you're gonna be the guy who wins the million. People look at that lineup and go, "Really? What an idiot!" And you can be that idiot. It's Seth Roberts week, baby.
You mentioned Jared Cook. I was big on him last week. He let me down. The problem is here, I'm kind of debating, can he be this guy to go out and get 7-8 targets a game and be productive if he's the main focus?
No.
I kind of think he only might be the guy who sneaks in defenses in and out. Like, that's kind of where my worry is here.
That's exactly right. That's a great call, and that's what we're seeing happen, against Denver and New England. Well, also, I think New England put extra emphasis on him because he'd been playing so well. So teams know, and he's been around for a while and kind of been an explosive weapon for a while. So teams know about him. 5,500 on FanDuel, certainly in play for me. But like I mentioned, just like Ingram, even at his price, is just a total contrarian play. And then, so I think Hunter Henry is the best play of the week. Super cheap. And the eyes raised. You guys probably didn't see that. Jason's eyebrows rose into his hat and onto the ceiling and then came back down. I think Hunter Henry is a dime. That's one of a kind. Something, something, something. That rap song from high school.
Russ,
Yeah.
I agree with you because
Wow. Yeah.
he literally has the best matchup on the board this week. I know a lot of people are going to look, oh, Giants will have the most fantasy points. Cleveland, Hunter Henry is in the best spot here. And he was also in a couple of good spots a couple times this season. And, targets were not there. We saw Antonio Gates, fluke touchdown. Like, I love Hunter Henry this week. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. He's 4,700 on DraftKings. It's a little bit up there. 54 on FanDuel. I think with the pricing the way it is this season at tight end, that's clearly kind of the new value zone. Um, yeah, I like Henry coming off a big week against Dallas. He's only going to see 5-6 targets, per game here, but he's efficient with the targets that he gets. He kind of gets those big chunk yardage plays. We saw that last 2 weeks. 27 and 15. It sucks up. We see that earlier this year where he has a couple of receptions go for over 30 yards. Yeah, I'm cool with it. He's got to get that touchdown. You kind of hope he does, but yeah, for a cheap guy, he kind of beats out a lot of these other options.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Kicker.
Obviously I did the pod with Denny over on lineups.com. He was more than happy to go back to the well with Gostkowski, Will Lutz. His top points per dollar play on the board this week was Josh Lambo at 4,600.
Okay. Did he specify if Lambo's going to get a concussion or his back?
He did not. We talked a lot about big Arby's buying Buffalo Wild Wings and what we need to do to prepare ourselves. So we didn't talk as much about kickers, but no concussion news. But Lambo 4,600. Indy's giving up a ton of field goals. Lambo's your best cheap guy, or you're paying up for Zerline. You're paying up for Gostkowski.
It was 2 weeks in a row. I forget what team it was. It was Lambo who got hurt, right?
And then no. It was Elliott who got the concussion.
Jake Elliott.
And then Novak on Thanksgiving.
Who was it against? Washington? No, it was Dallas. Dallas, man. So that's Thursday night tonight. Okay, we're safe this week. But if you're thinking you're playing Washington's kicker tonight, get out of here, man. High risk. Trust me as a guy who's invested in it. Yeah, Zerline Gostkowski. This is actually a thing, and this is why usually we skip over kicker. No. You have to play Zerline Gostkowski, Lutz, or, the top guys.
You can play Lambo this week. You really can.
You can play Lambo. Just be careful. Major back risk. Major. So.
All right. Let's move on here. Defense, it's kind of a weekly thing. So now with Winston back, I was kind of looking at the Packers this week. Not really that much of an option, I feel like, anymore at their cheaper price. We didn't get the bargain. There's no Chargers for 1,000 less than the top. Like, we're not getting a good value defense this week unless you have someone that I'm not on.
Patriots. Yeah. I think Patriots is really the only value I'm looking at, and then you go Chargers, Jags.
The Patriots they're 30. All right, I guess they're value.
They're not value. They're not
value. But they're 1,000 cheaper than
in comparison to what I'm looking at. 14 on Yahoo, 46 on FanDuel. They're the lowest I'm going to go because I'm terrified of fading Jags and Chargers. Like, now there's two. Monsoons they're like going into a monsoon every week when you play those Ds now. There's just so much pressure on the quarterback, especially in these, bad quarterbacks. It just is 13 points automatically.
All right. Can I tell you something, Russ?
What?
With Tyrod back, I think it changes things a little bit. Tyrod has never allowed huge upside games to opposing defenses this year.
Okay.
Let's go through here. 4-3, 4-3, 8-3, 13, 4, 25, which was Peterman, and then 2. Those are the opposing defense's fantasy scores against Buffalo this year.
Mm-hmm.
They don't turn the ball over, and Tyrod doesn't take sacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of worry about the upside where, okay, you know what, you can take a 7-8, from the Patriots, maybe get back to even, take a 10 this week.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be 3 to 4 defenses this week that also probably score 14, 15 plus.
Mm-hmm. I'll take my 12. Take my 10.
That's my thing here. So, if I'm having the salary left over, I'm really trying to jam in the Jags, who are in such a prime spot. Most sacks in the league against the team that allows the most. Brissett's just falling down in the backfield, and
they had 10 sacks last time they played Indy.
Yeah, and what did the Titans have last week?
I don't know, but
8. They had 8 sacks, Russ. They
yeah.
didn't do anything else and still got 11 points.
No, don't get me wrong.
I
Jaguars and Chargers are clearly like a step above, and you should be playing them in cash. I don't care, about value for this year. You're just playing them, even at the crazy prices. But I think the Pats could get you 10 or 12, and then you get that extra 900. So I'm
All
in on
right.
that.
Yeah, sure. GPP defenses, I like the Rams. I'm not a believer that Blaine Gabbert's going to save their season and continue to play next year as their starting quarterback. Rams defense has obviously shown huge upside. You do wish they were at home. They've been burned obviously a little bit of late, giving up 44 points in the last 2 games, haven't generated a ton of pressure, but against 2 really good offenses. I like Detroit this week here as a great GPP spot. Dude, Baltimore's offense is one of the most pitiful offenses I've ever seen.
It's a drag. It's really just a drag watching them and hoping they score any fantasy points. It's really a drag to watch Jeremy Maclin. I'll say saunter generously because he's not very good anymore.
No.
Sorry, Jeremy, you're not very good anymore. Mike Wallace, he's not very good anymore. Ben Watson is almost 50 years old. It's just bad.
Yeah. So you know what? Give me those 2 as pivots. Defenses. That's it. You said it. I mean, Baltimore is a team that's just
bad.
If they get into the playoffs somehow, I'll never watch football again.
Oh, they're gonna get in.
I know.
There's just so many.
It's my reason to never watch football again.
Bad teams stay bad, and the Ravens just leech and vulture off these like Detroit. They're probably gonna win this game by a field goal off like an Amir Abdullah fumble. Like Amir Abdullah's hurt. He's gonna come in for one play, fumble. They're gonna rumble to the 1 yard line, run out the clock, kick a field goal. 17-14, Ravens win.
Justin Tucker, 59-yarder because he's their best offensive player.
Justin Tucker from 65 for the
win. Oh, man. Well, I guess we can cap it up on the Ravens just being an ass team this year. It's a pretty good week here. I think, with the majority of the games being played, obviously on Sunday in the main slate, like we get a lot of options. A good slate, I will say that here. And to your point, I mean, you've been kind of riding this all pot long. Is the line of construction move this week really is to kind of use those value running backs and be able to get the Mike Evans, be able to get the Thielens, the Keenan Allens of the world.
Absolutely.
So any parting words on your end about life, football?
Let's just keep grinding. I've started to jump into NBA. Mixed results so far. It's getting to be a little more fun, though. I will say that. So certainly check out Daily Fantasy Cafe. Some of the articles are good, and the pods are definitely. You got a new youngin. Well, he's not really a youngin, but it's pretty good. You guys are doing some pretty good stuff over there.
Yeah. Me and Brent, we take the pods on every day, but Thursday and the weekends, and yeah, we're rolling strong in NBA. So, yeah, fun stuff. I'll kind of echo here. Definitely check out dailyfantasycafe.com. Our cheat sheets are up for week 13. Those will always be updated on various news moving forward. Articles for all the sports coming across on a daily basis. Check out the Optimizer. Check out our other podcasts. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe as well. And we'll see you guys in week 14.